three friends get under each other's skin while on a weekend retreat in our 13th caller's story, The Cabin at the End of the Lake. Alright, caller, you're on the air.
I'd already attacked and tied Tim to the center post of the cabin when Matt arrived. The three of us had planned a camping trip. We rented a small cabin at the edge of a lake. It was nice. We came to celebrate our recent sobriety, one weekend together before we returned to our old lives. We were friends. We trusted each other. Now, one of us sat cross-legged on the floor, tied to a post. "What's going on?" Matt asked. "That's not Tim," I said, double-checking the knots I'd tied in the ropes. "He's some kind of monster." "She hit me with a boat paddle," Tim said. He tilted his head so Matt could see the spot where the edge of the paddle hit him. His dishwater blonde hair was dark and matted with blood. "That's true. I hit him with the paddle," I said. "Only because that's not Tim. It's some kind of monster in a Tim suit." "Are you okay?" Matt asked him. "Yeah, but my head hurts. I think I have a concussion. Can you untie me?" Matt went to do just that, but I grabbed his arm and stopped him. "Don't," I said. "That's not Tim." The frustration on his face gave way to sadness, and I knew what he was thinking. I couldn't hold his gaze, so I looked away. "Jess, have you been—" "No. Please don't lie to me." "I haven't," I said in a voice louder than I meant. He nodded, but the sadness on his face remained. Matt pulled his arm free of my grasp and went to Tim. He bent down and removed a Swiss Army knife from his pocket. He opened the file and parted Tim's hair to get a better look. A thin slice ran across the crown of his head. The cut was deep and a good 5 inches long. "You did a number on him. Doesn't look serious, but he'll need stitches." He touched the file to the edge of the cut and eyed the depth of the injury. Tim winced and made a pained grunt. "Everything okay up there?" Tim asked. "Yeah, I'm more concerned about your concussion." "Are you feeling tired?" he said. Tim shook his head. "No, I'm all right." "I'd like you to untie me." "Sure," Matt said, and he laid the Swiss Army knife on the ground by the post. "Don't do it, Matt." I ran to the paddle I had struck him with. It leaned against the kitchen bar, nestled between the bar stools. I grabbed it and raised the paddle above me like a hockey player. Dried blood still covered the paddle blade. "Untie me, man. She's gone off the deep end." Tim struggled beneath the ropes, but Matt remained calm. He rose slowly to his feet and stepped away from the knots he was about to untie. His hands held high in the air. "All right, Jess. I won't untie him, but I need you to put the paddle away and tell me what you mean. I need an explanation for this." He spoke in a voice that was flat and controlled, like a negotiator in a hostage situation. His tone made me feel like I was crazy, and the fact I held a paddle covered in the blood of a man I tied to a post didn't help me feel any more sane. Maybe I was crazy. I thought. He went swimming in the lake and something attached itself to his face. Something sort of squid-like or fish. I'm not sure. I saw him struggling to reach the shore, and I ran to help him. This thing was in his mouth, forcing itself down its throat, choking him. I tried to pull it out, but couldn't get a grip. The only thing I could do was to get him to the shore. But by that time, he had passed out and swallowed the thing. I laid him on the sand. He looked dead, Matt. I thought we'd lost him. But then he suddenly sat up like nothing happened. Then he just wandered up to the cabin. Matt patiently listened to my story. His brows furrowed and his lips tightened in disappointment. I knew that look well. I'd been on its receiving end countless times throughout my stay at the rehab center. I committed myself. Matt checked in at the same time I did. Though he did so because of a court order, he was a model patient. I was not. Despite that, we became friends. Without him or Tim, who is on his third tour of duty, I wouldn't have made it through the program. Out of all the times I'd been on the receiving end of that look, this one hurt the most. Listen, I know this sounds insane, and after saying it out loud, I don't blame you for thinking I'm crazy. But I'm telling you, I know what I saw. Ask her what she had in her hand, Tim said with a playful lilt to his voice. Matt's eyebrow raised. Well, my face felt hot and my throat tightened. I looked away. Thought so, he said, and he returned to freeing Tim. Matt, I'm not lying. I ran to him. My hand gripped his shoulder and I pulled him away from the knots. When I ever lied to you, I was always honest with you. Matt stared into my eyes with the clinical look I'd seen in the eyes of the doctors at the rehab center when they tried to suss out if you were lying. I held his stare. Believe me, I said, and meant it. Is there alcohol in this cabin? He asked. Yes, there is. I found a couple of bottles in Tim's bag. I was going to confront him about it, and then I saw him struggling in the water. She's lying, Matt. Untie me before we both end up tied to this post. Check his bag, I said. Matt walked to the bunk beds at the far wall. He yanked Tim's duffel bag off the top bunk. Clothing, toiletries, and a thick gray towel folded around something fell to the floor with a heavy clunk. Matt looked over his shoulder at Tim and stepped on the corner of the towel. He kicked the middle of the towel with his other foot. It unfolded, and the bottle of whiskey hidden inside slid across the floor. Matt picked it up. His eyes kept their calm, clinical gaze as he marched towards Tim, who sputtered and panicked, trying to think of an excuse. Matt squatted to Tim's level and held the partially drunk bottle up to his face. She planted it there, I swear. Matt didn't respond. Matt, this is ridiculous, Tim said. Matt looked into Tim's eyes and said, You're lying to me. Tim nodded his head, resigned to the fact we had caught him. He rested the back of his head against the post. He chuckled and he smiled. Why can't anything be simple, he said. Then rose off the floor and kicked Matt in the chest with both feet. Matt sprawled backward across the floor. Tim's body swelled against the ropes, and they snapped. Matt got back onto his feet. Tim moved in and punched him in the stomach, knocking the wind out of him. Matt dropped to his knees, coughing. Tim delivered a swift kick to his lower jaw that laid him out flat on his back. Matt was down for the count. "I wanted this to be clean," Tim said, removing his shirt before grabbing the skin at his waist and peeling it off like a sweater, revealing the amphibious creature beneath. He seemed to grow larger once he was free of the constrictive Tim suit. "Enjoy a nice, relaxing weekend with no incidents." He removed his boots. "Infect you two in your sleep." He shimmed out of the lower half of Tim like a pair of long johns. A belt with a holster and water pump appeared in a red glow. It hung slouched above the two newt-like legs. "Then go home with neither of you the wiser." He gripped the flaps of Tim's neck and pulled the head off like a rubber mask. The same red glow appeared over Tim's toothy mouth, then vanished, revealing a respirator. The tubes pumped water through the long cable that formed and connected to the pump at his waist. His large, slanted pupils shrunk as they adjusted to the light. I made the move to run, but Tim was faster. He grabbed me by the neck and raised me off my feet. He squeezed. Dark circles filled my vision. They grew in size as the cabin blurred and the darkness enveloped my world. I woke seated next to Matt on the ground, our backs tied to the post that I had tied Tim to. The front door was open and I could see Matt's truck backed up to a large metal saucer at the edge of the lake. A glowing red rectangle appeared on the front of the disc, like a window shade being drawn. The door flashed, and Tim appeared. He carried a metal crate under each arm and set them into the back of Matt's truck bed. He returned to the red door and entered. With a bright flash, he vanished inside. After a moment, the door flashed again, and Tim appeared with two more metal crates that he took to Matt's truck. He set one in the back of the truck and carried the other into the cabin. Matt groaned and came to. "What happened?" he said. "Good question," Tim said. He set two glass canisters on the kitchen counter. Inside floated two creatures, like the one I saw attack Tim in the water. They looked like a cross between a squid and a tadpole. "I planned to do this when you both were asleep. The hosts struggle when they're awake." The water pumped rhythmically with each of Tim's breaths from his mask to the pump attached to his belt. He removed the lid from the canister and stuck his hand inside. Clear liquid oozed down the sides of the canister. Tim removed the tadpole and carried it over to Matt. He squatted in front of him, holding the tadpole level with Matt's mouth. The tadpole squirmed. Long strands of slime flicked from its tail and the tentacle-like arms and legs that coiled against his body. Tim pressed the tadpole against Matt's lips, and it came alive. The creature thrashed its head from side to side, forcing its head into Matt's closed mouth. It grunted and interrupted as it pushed against his clenched teeth. Tim grabbed Matt by the sides of his mouth and squeezed. His mouth opened. The tadpole squirmed forward into his throat. Slime foamed at the corners of Matt's mouth. Wet, slopping sounds filled the cabin. Tim gagged and clutched the front of his filtration mask. The process doesn't sound as disgusting when you're asleep. Matt gagged, and the tadpole sunk further down his throat with a wet slurp. Tim heaved. "I gotta get out of here." He grabbed the empty canister and headed for the door. Stopping short, he turned to me. I'll be back for you later, he said, then waddled towards his ship. My eyes darted around the room, landing on the pocket knife with the file extended. I reached for the body of the knife with my boot, and I came up short, scooting my rump forward and sliding down the pole as far as the ropes allowed. I tried again. The body of the knife popped out from beneath my boot, spinning around on the ground. Next to me, Matt gagged. Foam mixed with blood dripped down his chin as the tadpole forced itself deeper into his throat. Small tears formed at the sides of his mouth. Snot flew from his nose with every forced exhale. I scooted my butt further forward. The ropes cut into my arms and stomach. I lowered my foot slowly onto the leather punch tip of the file and pulled it towards the edge of my rump, then reached for the knife. My fingers felt the edges of the knife for the large blade. I opened the blade after several tries and set to work, cutting the bottom braid of the rope. Matt had passed out. Snot still flared from his nose. He was still alive. The torso of the tadpole was in his mouth. Its head was now a massive lump in his throat. The blade cut through the bottom cord of the rope, and the rest went slack. I shifted beneath their coils. Freeing my elbow with the extra range of motion, I jabbed the knife at the tadpole. The blade dug deep into the tadpole's side. Slime flew from its flailing tail, sticking to everything it touched in thick, clear gobs. I pushed the knife deeper into the tadpole until the side of my hand pressed against the thing's body. The tadpole worked itself backward out of Matt's mouth and landed on the ground, flopping like a fish. Matt gasped for air. I swung the heel of my boot down with all the force I could manage on top of the tadpole's snapping head, right between the pits where its eyes should have been. I brought my foot down again, this time crushing the head beneath the heel of my boot. Beside me, Matt fought to loosen the surrounding ropes. The Tim creature knocked on the frame of the open door before peeking its head inside the cabin. How are things going in here? Despite the mask, the look of horror on Tim's face was apparent when he noticed the dead tadpole at our feet, lying in a pool of foaming green blood. The knife was stuck in its side and had a boot-sized dent in its head. Tim bent down and poked it with his claw, then rolled it over. He rose to his feet and removed what looked like a dollar store laser gun from his holster. Tim aimed the gun at us. Matt jumped him, and Tim fired. A bright burst of light erupted from the candy apple red ball of the muzzle, and Matt's left leg evaporated in a pink light. But there was no blood. I grabbed the boat paddle. Tim turned his laser gun on me, but Matt bit his leg. The beam missed, and I swung the paddle down onto his head, striking the same spot I'd hit him last time. Tim staggered backward in a daze. The laser gun fell from his hand. I seized the gun and fired. Tim burst into a bright, fuzzy pink outline and disappeared. With a loud exhale, I dropped the gun and joined Matt on the floor. We sat there and silently processed everything. We didn't move from the floor for a while. Matt lifted the blackened stump of his leg, cut off at the knee, and stared at it. "That's unfortunate," he said. "It doesn't look too bad," I said. The burn was smooth and clean, except for the char marks. It looked as if he'd never had a leg at all. "Let's get out of here, preferably to a hospital," he said. and I agreed. I eased Matt into the passenger side of the pickup truck, then climbed behind the wheel and started the truck. It wasn't until we turned onto the first paved road and could see the small lights of houses in the distance that I broke the silence. "Matt?" I said. He didn't respond. "Thanks for trusting me." He smiled. I guess the trip was a success.
Thanks for calling.
I liked that one. Glad I came back on a high note.
Ryan, where have you been? It's been months.
I used my paid vacation days. Didn't you read the email?
Oh. That's a lot of unread messages. Do we really get paid vacations?
Yeah. How did you not? I guess that's the end. Like and subscribe?